Karen Kazan is allowing it. Make sure I'm in.
That's right. It's too late.
You have 2 minutes.
It's a done deal.
It sounds loaded.
It is when it comes from Jim.
Now 5.
You've already finished the budget, right?
Well, I'm sure there's some budget amendment on the, there's always seems to be a budget amendment.
Anything you need 600 in your hardware room. Good.
Don't worry about it.
But I know Fred's around here somewhere.
No?
Let's see, we got him.
That'll be 6.
1 minute. 1 minute.
We may not. Might need to table some stuff. Is Fred coming?
Call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Buckner,
Here.
Reverend Campbell, Mayor Jones,
Here.
Dr. Miller,
I'm here.
Mr. Saunders,
Here.
Mr. Shanks, Mr. Tomer, Vice Mayor Vogler,
Here.
Mr. Whittle.
Just want to say good evening to everyone. We will have our invocation by Vice Mayor J. Lee Vogler Jr., followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would stand, please.
Lord, we thank you for allowing us to come here tonight to discuss issues of importance to our city and our people. And we pray for safety over this holiday week, where it is a time where we remember the freedoms and privileges that we have in this country that we are so blessed to have. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good evening to everyone and welcome to our meeting. Communications from visitors, citizens who desire to speak on items that's not listed on the agenda may come forward at this time. Please state your name and address for the record, and we know this young man and want to say good evening to you. Mr. Barksdale.
Good evening, Jesse Barksdale. I'm a resident of Chatham. Good evening, everybody. Mayor Jones, members of council, thank you for the opportunity for us to give you a brief update on the airport open house and the Young Eagles rally that was held on June 22nd. We have a short video, and I'm going to have to ask Mr. Larkin, are you ready to go? Yes. Okay. I'm going to stop right here, and we have a video clip, and I want to say that I am excited for you all to see this short video. Mr. Larkin, go ahead.
Just seeing the excitement on their faces and hearing them actually scream a lot of times in the airplane just out of excitement. And seeing their big smiles when we get back down on the ground. Yeah, it's fun for me. It's at least as fun for me as it is for them.
The flight? It was amazing. It was like you're a giant in the air. Like you're looking down. Like, it's like the see like everything. Well, it was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed every second of it. At first, I was a little nervous about taking off, but I think that was my favorite part actually, because it was an exhilaration that came with it, and it was really great all the way. Best pilot ever.
I got started flying when I was a teenager, and I got hooked right away. And so I know how important it is for young folks to get a ride early on. And that inspires them to maybe want a career in aviation, because there is a pilot shortage. I'm in the industry, and there is a pilot shortage. We need to encourage the young kids, and this is the best way to do it when they get so excited about it.
I think that's a little treasure. You know, we didn't have a crew recording anything, no scripts or anything like that, but it was produced by Mark Aaron, and he did a really good thing. It was a great day. I mean, it was through and through. It was great. 128 children completed a free flight, and hundreds of other people took in the airport tours. And one of the attraction was the Science Museum Star Lab. Some of the other stops were Averett's Flight Center. We have the Civil Air Patrol hangar and aircraft. And I think for some people, the icing on the cake was going up in the tower, seeing a different perspective of the airport. We're grateful that the pilots from Danville as well as North Carolina, they collaborated and made it possible for the children to get these rides. Not only were the students and the children and the parents were thrilled, I think the pilots had some fun also, expressing their passion for aviation. And I think we know that we have a tremendous shortage of pilots throughout the country. And so we hope that the rally will inspire some of the young people to think about having a career in aviation. Last but not least, on behalf of the Airport Commission, Mayor Jones, and members of council, we thank you all for your support for this event. And if you have any questions, I'm going to get them to Mr. Edelman.
Any questions? I just personally want to say thank you. 128 young people participating. It's just amazing. You are absolutely correct. I want to thank Mark Aaron for the video. The video speaks volumes. If persons wanted copies of the video, how do they get copies of the video? See, Mark?
Yes.
Good. Any questions? Facebook? Yes. If there are other members of the Airport Commission from the airport, would you please stand, please? Anybody else here from the Airport Commission? Just want to say, please.
It's a little me.
Well, just please thank them for us. Fred?
Yeah, Jesse, I'm really pleased that you're back on the Airport Commission, and I'm excited to see things happening at the airport like this kind of event. We need to have that more often, and it really is an opportunity to let Danville shine. So thank you for your work, and Mark, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much again. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. We're still in communications from visitors. Anyone who would like to speak on any item that's not on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Under new business, minutes, consideration of approval of minutes from regular council meeting held on June the 4th. Council, what's your pleasure? Councilman Buckner?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from
Is
the
there
June 4th meeting, 2019.
Second by Councilman Whittle. Discussion of the motion. Discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Under new business, a consideration of authorizing an application to the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation for grant funds. I open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. I close the public hearing. Councilman Buckner.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a resolution authorizing an application by the city to the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation for grants for operating and capital costs for public transportation for the fiscal year 2020.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Whittle. Discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Consideration of amending the fiscal year 2020 budget appropriation ordinance to provide for state demonstration grant funds related to regional bus service. I open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. I close the public hearing. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move we adopt an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2020 budget appropriation ordinance to provide for state demonstration grant assistance funds related to the provision of regional bus service by the Danville Transit System to Halifax and Pittsylvania counties in the amount of $183,275, cash fare revenues in the amount of $24,192, and for the local share in the amount of $45,819, for a total appropriation of $253,286 and appropriating the same. First reading.
Second by Councilman Whittle. Consideration of amending the fiscal year 2020 budget appropriation ordinance to provide for State Department of Aviation maintenance grant funds. Council, what's your pleasure? Council, what's your pleasure? Mr. Sherman, Mr. Saunders.
Adopting an ordinance amending fiscal year 2020 budget appropriation ordinance to provide for State Department of Aviation maintenance grant funds related to the maintenance of certain airport properties in the amount of $100,000 and for the local share in the amount of $52,750 for a total appropriation of $52,750 and appropriating the same for first reading.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Buckner. Consideration of rezoning from Old Town Residential to Tobacco Warehouse District, parcel ID numbers 22511 and 26632. I open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Dennis Butler, representing World Media. World Media is the parent company of the Register and Bee. The subject parcels adjoin the Register and Bee building on the west side in front on Franklin Street. The Register and Bee building is 46,000 square feet. It only has 27 parking spaces. The zoning change would permit the owner of this building to add additional parking spaces as the need arises. The zoning permits curb parking, but curb parking does not always satisfy customer needs. And as you know, neither will it satisfy parking, period, moving forward as this area continues to grow. The area is currently comprised of a wide variety of mixed-use businesses, including residential, office, single-family, multifamily, industrial, government, education, entertainment, and churches, all within a 3-block radius of the subject property. In summary, if approved, the anticipated future use for parking meets a growing community need, is consistent with the city's future plans, and it's complementary to the existing uses. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. We're still in, any questions? Thank you so much. We're still in public hearing. Anyone else would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward this time. I close the public hearing. Councilman Buckner.
Mayor, I'd like to make an ordinance, I'd like to approve an ordinance rezoning from OTR, Old Town Residential, to TWC, Tobacco Warehouse District, parcel 22511 and parcel 26632, otherwise known as grid 2718, block 019, parcel 000-012 and 000-011 of the city of Danville, Virginia, zoning district map.
Second by Councilman Saunders. Discussion of the motion. Discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell.
Consideration of rezoning from neighborhood commercial and suburban residential to conditional neo-traditional residential portions of parcels, ID numbers 59958 and 51032. I open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward this time. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Jones and members of council. I am Kim Baldridge. I'm the executive director for the local Habitat for Humanity affiliate here in this area. We all know what Habitat means, what Habitat stands for. The vision of the entire Habitat is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. The mission being seeking to put God's love into action. We want Habitat, as we come together, to build communities and homes and hope for people in this area. So we at Danville, Pennsylvania County Habitat, have been doing that since 1991 in this area, having built 45 homes, currently building the 46th home. And about 10 years ago, St. Luke's United Methodist Church on North Main had donated approximately 6 to 7 acres to us, and the ability to build homes we had at the time, the vision back many years ago was to build about 8 homes. But now, in order to be able to build more homes and impact more families, we would like to see if this zoning to NTR, which is neo-traditional, it helps to, it's a high density and it will decrease the setbacks of the properties, where we will have the ability to build close to 30 homes and to be able to affect that many people in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you all do. Thank you. We're still in public hearing. Anyone else who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward this time. I close the public hearing. Council, what's your pleasure? Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I move we adopt an ordinance rezoning from NC Neighborhood Commercial and SR Suburban Residential to conditional NTR Neo-Traditional Residential District parcels 59958 and 51032, otherwise known as Grid 2918, Block 004, parcels 0000033 and 0000018 of the City of Danville, Virginia zoning district map.
Is there a second? Councilman Shanks, discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye. Consideration of amending the zoning ordinance to allow for short-term rentals of entire homes within residential districts. I'll open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward at this time. I close the public hearing. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move we adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 41 entitled Zoning Ordinance of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986 as amended, more specifically Article 2 entitled General Regulations, various subarticles and sections of Article 3 entitled Zoning Districts, and Article 15 entitled Definitions, Section B entitled Definitions to allow for short-term rentals of an entire home within residential districts.
Second by Councilman Buckner. Discussion of the motion. Councilman Shanks.
Can we have some staff answer some questions?
Staff, could you please come forward?
So can you summarize for the public the ramifications or the changes that are being included here today?
Just summarize the
Just-
changes.
Well, yeah, with regard to rental of full homes for short-term rentals.
So this is basically, like you said, the whole entire home may be rented on the short-term basis. We're suggesting, Planning Commission and staff recommending that it's by special use permit. Most of the time, we just basically copied wherever bed and breakfast is allowed by special use permit, it's by special use permit. If it's allowed by right, by right. We did recommend and worked out some safety conditions or safety requirements with Planning Commission. That's just based on what other cities have been implementing, as well as issues that they've had that have arisen, just trying to make sure that anyone who comes into the city is safe and actually enjoys their stay.
Thank you. The question that I'm really most concerned about is where a special exception permit is and is not required. Can you answer to that?
Yeah, the special use permit, it would be required, I believe it's basically all residential districts. Where it's not required would be some of those like transitional districts, kind of like the transitional office commercial district, where bed and breakfasts are currently allowed by right, just keeping it consistent because they are similar uses.
So in all residential districts, a special exception permit would be required?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Saunders?
I think, Mr. Mayor, as a follow-up on Mr. Shank's question and comments, I too looked at letter 2145. Say more about rental property, residential area, how that relates to hotels, bed and breakfast organization. You're going to collect tax on this property. How are you going to do that if it's a short-term rental? And why do we have short-term rental in residential neighborhoods?
It's, so I think we've talked about this a little bit before. It's kind of come up a couple times now where people are basically renting out their homes similar to a hotel room, except it's a residential house or was constructed for that use. This is kind of making that process a little bit clearer for people who want to do that in terms of what they need to go through to make it consistent with city regulations in terms of the safety as well as reporting taxes. Before now, people can kind of do it and we might not necessarily know about it. The Planning Commission did also recommend that City Council look at how they want to tax it. Right now, it's just basically taxed similar to hotels, but they didn't know if you wanted to look at it separately or not.
So a special license is required to do that? Or a special permit, should I say, is required to do that?
The special use permit for residential districts, yeah.
I know that VIR oftentimes have events, and it's a sellout. All the hotels are filled as well, and people stay 50, 100 miles, or 75 miles away to come here. So in cases like this, can people rent these homes and on a short-term basis in the residential neighborhoods?
If they've gone through the process beforehand, yes.
Is the people going through the process or the owner going through the process?
The owner. So once they get, if they live in a residential district or own the home in the residential district,
Yeah.
and they get the special use permit ahead of time, they would be able to do this.
Okay, and last question, Mr. Mayor. How will you know who's renting their property in the residential area?
Since this came up to our attention, we've kind of started to keep an eye out on some of the sites just because we want to make sure that everyone's being consistent so some people aren't being treated unfairly as opposed to others.
I mean, but how will you know that I'm renting my property for 2 months?
For 2 months?
Yes.
Are you talking
Or
about
3
doing,
months, or 6 months, or a year?
if you're doing it for a year, that would just be an ordinary residential rental.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because, as you mentioned, we've talked a lot about Airbnb and similar situations over the last few months. I think it goes without saying I'm a big supporter of these types of things. What we're talking about here is an opportunity that is based in the private sector to potentially revitalize neighborhoods in our city. If you look at other localities that have allowed for this, Airbnb, there's numerous examples of neighborhoods that were completely revitalized by people being able to rent the homes in this manner. As Councilman Saunders just alluded to, we have a number of events that happen in our area that fill up the hotels, and folks need somewhere to stay. And as we found out, we've talked about this before, there are a growing number of people who prefer an authentic experience when they stay somewhere. They would prefer to stay in a home rather than in a hotel. And I think allowing a property owner that ability is a good thing. Again, this isn't a radical concept. What we're talking about is just getting us up to speed and in line with where most localities have been for a long time. We've been kind of behind the times until recently in regards to this. If you want an example of what these type of projects can do, the next agenda item that we're going to be voting on in a minute, Mr. Davis, what he has done down on Plum Street is tremendous. Drive down there and look at it, what he has done. If you want an example of what these type of projects can do, I'm very familiar with that neighborhood, and over the last several years driving through there, it is unbelievable what he has done. And if you want to see that kind of transformation potentially happen in more places in our city, we should approve this tonight. I'm in favor of this 100%. I'm glad that the Planning Commission unanimously approved this, and we didn't hear anyone come and speak out against it tonight. So I'm 100% in favor of it. Thank you.
Councilman Shanks.
Yes. Since the special exception permit, Mr. Vogler, is still in place, I'm 100% for it too. I'm very familiar with Plum Street. I've done a lot of work on Plum Street. It is an excellent example of how a neighborhood can be transformed through people that care. What bothers me is this city council recently approved air bed and breakfasts without a special exception permit, and that was wrong. I look at each of you and say, that was wrong. If you own your home, you should have the opportunity to present your thoughts to council with regard to development that occurs where in a residential neighborhood where your biggest investment is a residence. Your whole life, your biggest investment, Mr. Vogler, is a residence. And I don't understand how we passed that last one. It passed with 2 no votes, and that was wrong. You did the citizens wrong. And I just wanted to make sure that city planning staff, members of council, other members of the community understand that personal rights, property rights should be protected, and that's what the zoning law is all about. And we made a big mistake, and I would like to see that undone. I just wanted to know today whether a special exception permit was going to be required every time in a residential situation. And that being the case, city council gets to hear from the neighborhood about their concerns. But no, we're going to do air. Somebody could own a house and have 3 air breakfasts beside each other, on each side of it. Never comes to council. That was just so wrong. Thank you.
Councilman Whittle.
Yeah, did the Commissioner of Revenue go through this process with you?
Yeah, we have been discussing this with him throughout the process.
Okay, and how was he going to take care of that? He was good with it?
Yeah, he was fine with it. He was part of the conversations that we've been having, and we talked with him as well as Mr. Davis, and then sorry, his name eludes me now, but the gentleman on West Main Street who's also operating one, or the bed and breakfast. But because they've been part of these conversations, they've all been continued to be.
Thank you.
Dr. Miller.
Yeah, just for clarification, these are short-term rentals. What is the definition of short-term rental, and where does the 57-year-old widow who wants to rent her house for a year to students that go study at the hospital for a year, where do they fall?
That would just still be an ordinary residential rental. This is the short-term rentals that we're talking about. It's typically less than a month. Planning Commission kind of got hung up on some of that terminology, which is where the phrase furnished whole home came in, just to help clarify that people are coming in, like was said earlier, for events. So if you're renting it out for like 6 months to a year, it's just a student coming in for college, that's just is treated similarly to a lease, really.
What is that person's obligation to the city? That person's obligation to the city, the person that rents out their house for a year. In other words, do they pay tax on it? On the
Not that I know
rent?
of. It wouldn't
They pay
be.
property tax just like the
No,
city.
I know they pay tax on it, but say if I rent out a room for a year, the student, okay, am I paying, do I have to pay the city taxes on that for
No,
rent?
it would just be the property tax. It wouldn't, to the best of my knowledge, there's no separate tax for that.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Consideration of granting a special use permit at 500 Plum Street for short-term home rental. I open a public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please. Good evening.
Council members, good evening. My name is R.J. Lackey. I'm here representing Barry Davis with regard to a short-term rental. Mr. Davis owns a house on Plum Street. He lives there. We were here about a year ago for a piece of property he bought beside him, that he was renting in Airbnb, and that was passed as a bed and breakfast. Now we've got this new result, this new code. Mr. Davis has bought another house, torn it down. He paid $16,000. You can figure out how much that looked like, what that looked like on the property. He's got a building permit for $80,000, so intends to construct another building, another house, and rent it out under the Airbnb program. If you approve this ordinance, we'd ask that you do, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you.
We're still in public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item may come forward this time. I close the public hearing. Councilman Buckner?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve an ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term home rental in accordance with Article 3.E, Section C, Item 29 of the Code of the City of Danville, Virginia, 1986, as amended at 500 Plum Street, otherwise known as Grid 2710, Block 006, Parcel 0000008 of the City of Danville, Virginia zoning district map.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Whittle. Discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Consideration of amending the rules of procedure for Danville City Council. Council, what's your pleasure? Councilman Buckner.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a resolution amending the rules and procedure for the City of Danville, Virginia City Council.
Is there a second? Councilman Shanks, discussion of the motion. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Tomer. Vice Mayor Vogler.
Aye.
Mr. Whittle.
Aye.
Mr. Buckner.
Aye.
Reverend Campbell. Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Mr. Shanks.
Aye.
Communications City Manager.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy City Manager.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Clerk.
Nothing, sir.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Vogler.
Yeah, just a few quick points that I have some things the city manager and believe the city attorney are going to touch on. But last week, a citizen brought to my attention an article about this program that they're doing in Las Vegas, and they may be doing it in other places too, but for a limited amount of time, they are taking the parking tickets that are accumulated in the city and allowing folks the ability to, rather than pay the parking ticket, donate school supplies up to equal or greater to the amount of what that parking ticket was for a limited amount. I believe they're doing it for about a month leading into the school year, and asked if that was something we could do here. So I reached out to the city manager and the city attorney. I think personally that a program similar to that would be beneficial, and so I asked them to check into it for us. And I don't know if the city manager or city attorney, which one wants to jump in first, but Clark, if you want to explain how that could possibly happen here.
Sure, I'll be glad to. First of all, Virginia is a state in which unless you have the authority to do it, you can't do it. And Nevada has recently passed a law called, and they've now become partially a home rule state, which means with regard to localities, as long as they don't specifically prohibit it, they can do it. So that's how they're able to do that. In Virginia, we can't actually take something other than money for parking tickets. So that would be something that we couldn't do. However, what we could do is the city charter, both the city charter and the city code, allow the city to make a donation to charitable organizations. And it would have to be a situation where city council would have to appropriate the money and pass the money, whether it's a great amount of money or not. You could take the fines from a defined period of time. donate that to, say, an organization like the Danville Public Education Foundation. In turn, they would then buy the supplies. And so you would essentially be accomplishing the same purpose, but you just wouldn't be having people pay with supplies like pencils and pens. Now, libraries are a little bit different. Libraries are kind of left up to the locality of how they want to do those. So if you wanted to include that, people could pay their library fines with school supplies, and that wouldn't even require council action. But again, this would be something that a procedure we would go through, and council would have to approve it. They would have the final say-so as to how we did it.
Thank you. And so I would like it if council, I don't know how long of a discussion it has to take, but if it's something that we need to move forward, but I hope we can have that discussion. I know we're about a month or so away from the beginning of the school year, but the mayor does a wonderful job talking a lot about partnerships, and obviously our partnership with the school system and our children, the future of our city and our region are very important. And so this potentially, and maybe city manager, because I'm sure there may be some folks out there wondering what if we decided to do the route, say a month of the parking tickets. Last July or last August, what was roughly the amount of revenue that parking tickets brought in?
It was about $960 last July.
$960. So I think this is hopefully something that council can have a conversation. I don't think it'll take too long to talk about in a work session, and if it's something we need to vote on out here, hopefully we can do that. The other thing that I asked the city manager to do tonight, because I know all of us on council, we get questions about updates on the flood damage and where the river walk and certain things that have been out of commission for a while, where we are on all of that. So I asked the city manager if he wouldn't mind providing an update tonight on where we are on the flood damages and where things are being repaired, not repaired, and where everything stands.
Sure. As everyone's aware, last October, Tropical Storm Michael came through and created a lot of havoc in our community. We had multiple millions of dollars of damage to all sorts of public infrastructure, and we were fairly quick in getting a lot of the critical infrastructure back up and running, like the electrical infrastructure especially. Some of the roads that had to be repaired, that some of them were impassable. I know the mayor lived down the street where I think he had to go through the woods in order to get to his house until it could be repaired. So that was, I consider that critical infrastructure on 3rd Avenue West. So we got a temporary repair in there as quickly as we could later that week, but it took a few months before we can get the permanent repair in place. But now that is complete. But that being said, there are still multiple items that still are on our list of things to do, including a couple of items that are high profile on the Riverwalk Trail. There's the bridge that's behind Public Works, which I believe is over, I forget which creek that is, but it got washed out and got washed down the Dan River, and we fished it out, but it wasn't able to be reused, and we've had to re-engineer that. That takes some time, and you have to get the permitting process through and all that. So we're really expecting that to be done probably in December, weather permitting. The same thing for a culvert that is also on the Riverwalk Trail, and it's I think it's Barker's Branch is the creek there. I remember that name. It's the one that kind of winds around where the bypass is. If you go on the Riverwalk Trail underneath the bypass, and it kind of does a S-curve around. It's washed out a couple of times, and we've been able to repair it, but the last time it was such a huge washout that there wasn't really a good way to repair it, and it's requiring quite an extensive amount of work. A culvert, I think it's going to be a double culvert instead of a single culvert, so that would last a lot longer. That's also projected to be in place in December. It's got to be engineered. We've got to make sure we do it right so it doesn't wash out again. There are many other minor projects throughout the city that we are awaiting approvals from various federal and state agencies. We're working with FEMA to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's to get all the reimbursement possible. Looking after our local taxpayers' dollars, we want to make sure that whatever we are able to qualify for in those programs, FEMA and FHWA, that we recoup as much of that as possible. Both organizations have different processes, and we've been pretty successful with FEMA. Although it is somewhat time-consuming, I will defend them and say that they have a mission to make sure that their money is spent as wisely as possible too. So they want to make sure that everything qualifies properly, and they're checking that against what we're doing. And but we are starting to see some of those reimbursements come in. The FHWA is the Federal Highway Administration. FEMA will not reimburse for certain projects on major roadways. So, for example, Memorial Drive is considered a major roadway, so FHWA will provide the funding for that. So we have to go through a separate process, and their process has been a little more convoluted than FEMA's process, and we're trying to work through that. On top of that, and you might not notice this from driving by on Memorial Drive, there's a little place there next to the river that has had cones around it for months. For example, there's an environmental issue because it's so close to the river. We have to make sure that we pass all the permitting, that it's engineered appropriately, that the riverbank doesn't wash away. So that it's a multiple month process, unfortunately, to get it done. We've had higher priorities when it's come to other projects like 3rd Avenue West, for example, and others. So we're getting to it as quickly as we can. We haven't noticed any traffic issues on Memorial, so it's, you know, it's in process, but it's taking a little more time than we'd hope. I would say we probably have multiple millions of dollars in public infrastructure damage. Did a lot of that got taken care of early, like I said, with the electrical stuff especially. But there's probably, if you look at everything throughout the city, we're looking at maybe 12 months before we feel like we've completely finished everything that's been damaged.
What's the cost of that bridge you were talking about? Just to let the public know.
You know what? I don't have that in front of me. So
isn't it well over 100,000, 200?
Yes, it's got to be. We have to buy the bridge. We have to reconstruct the abutments on either side of the creek, and there's concrete work. There's the bridge has to be actually purchased and shipped. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, but I don't have an exact number on that. But we expect to get a good portion of that reimbursed through FEMA.
Okay. Back to you, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, and for that information. Again, that's something that's valuable, and folks watching on River City TV and on the reruns later on will be able to get that information. So thank you. And lastly, I just want to close by wishing everyone a happy 4th of July and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whittle?
Sure. One thing is the Rotary's got the Field of Honor, and you need to go down and see it. It's it did a fantastic job with it. Check on your neighbors whether you like them or not, because it's extremely hot out, and it doesn't take much to look in on somebody. Council did get a thank you from the rescue squad. I was at their meeting or their awards banquet last Saturday night, and they were appreciative of the increase in funding that council did for it. And I know it's all council together that makes these decisions to get them done. And the other thing is as far as council members, it's a great diverse group of folks that can make different meetings that if some other council are busy, they can show up for. The mayor was at Rock the Block. I didn't know who else made that, but it was a good event. And happy 4th. Thank you.
Could you share with those persons who visited our city for the 4th exactly where the field for the flags are, so they can know where they are?
Yeah, it's on the corner of Main and Memorial.
Good. That's great. Thank you. Great job.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Buckner?
Yeah, don't let anyone forget about the 4th of July festivities that are happening at the Carrington Pavilion again this year. It should be a great time, and fireworks starting at dark. And if you're there right around 6:45, you may see a special guest there speaking and welcoming and letting everybody know that the festivities are about to begin. Mayor Jones, we look forward to that as always.
Yes.
Everybody just have a fun, safe, and happy 4th of July.
Thank you.
Reverend Campbell? Dr. Miller?
Yeah, last week, the wife of the Senate Majority Leader in Virginia, Tommy Norman, was announced as a lobbyist for the city of Norfolk for the casino bill. These other cities are taking this very seriously. There's a lot of jockeying for position, if you will. for both the horse racing and the casino. So we've got several cities, including now some in Northern Virginia, who are interested in casinos. Portsmouth, Richmond, Bristol. And I know the citizens are going to decide whether Danville has off-track betting and casinos. But I'm afraid if we don't get in the game and aren't represented well by a lobbyist at the state legislature, we're going to be left at the starting gate. We may never get a chance to vote on it. So I know we're going to be discussing this, but I just wanted to say this has become a big-time issue when the wife of the Senate Majority Leaders becomes a lobbyist for that city. Congratulations to the fire department. Last week, there were 15 for like over 2 months. 15 potential firemen, EMTs trained. 9 of them made the final cut, and I want to give kudos to Matt Hines. Matt has been one of our cardiovascular technicians for the last few years. We hate to lose him, but it's been his lifelong ambition to be a fireman. He's still going to back us up on the weekends, but he did make the cut, and he's now become a fireman. And I want to congratulate all the new firemen. Last week I was in Memphis visiting my daughter. I looked out over the Mississippi River, and at night from 8 to 11, they have a light show on all their bridges. And it's pretty impressive. I think we could do something like that here for 2 or 3 bridges, have a light show. They start at 11, it goes to, they start at 8 o'clock at night, it gets dark until 11. I'd like to look into not just to light the bridges, but have a light show. And I've got videos of it to show the council members. The 4th of July festivities, it's always a great event. And I want to tell you about another one, Music on Main next week on the 11th. The Cruise Control Band will be there. And I'm sponsoring that, and I want you all to be there because they are good, and all of these Music on Main shows are very good. Happy 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Saunders?
Thank you. Mr. Boxdale, it's always great to see you, and thank you for all you're doing, your volunteer work as well. The Young Eagle program is very good. I think it's always good to invest in our young people. So a special thanks to you and Mark for putting that together. On the 13th of this month, on a Saturday, Hoop Don't Shoot, we'll be having a banquet at the River Church on West Main Street. And I think Ms. Angie Dickinson and her board and volunteers are doing a great job with our young people, keeping them in school, keeping them out of trouble. Just wonderful things happening in that. A lot of community volunteers. And I hope that you all, everybody can attend the event. Again, the 13th of July at the River Church. And the keynote speaker will be our mayor. So please come and support him as well as supporting our young people. And again, to say to everybody, happy 4th of July.
Thank you.
Mr. Shanks?
I'd like to extend those well wishes for happy 4th of July as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
City Manager.
Mention, and the fireworks display this year, like last year, will be shot from the Main Street Bridge. So if you're wanting to get a good viewing point, then there's a lot of great places to watch it along Memorial and on that side of the bridge, but also there are a limited number of spaces available on the future park site that the Parks and Recreation Department is selling as a fundraiser to help pay for the park. So you can, that's been advertised, and I don't have the number in front of me, but be glad to, I'm sure Parks and Recreation will be glad to direct you to the right person to talk to about securing one of those spaces. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
May I?
Yes, sir, please.
Is that park property in the city's name now, or is it in the IDA's name?
IDA.
So is money being collected by the IDA? And being passed
we
over?
received approval from the IDA to do it as a fundraiser for the park, but it'll be in the fund designated for the park.
It would have been nice to know ahead of time. There's been a lot of public concern about what was going on there. It's going to be what, about maybe $10,000 raised, which is a good amount of money for the park. But it would have been nice to know that up front, as opposed to hearing about it through questions asked by the taxpayers that have interest in that property.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tomer? Mayor Jones?
Mark Alderman, would you stand, Mark? You heard Mark. Want to say thank you so much for all that you've done to help the Airport Commission. A lot of times people hear of Mark Aaron. Now, Mark is the person that's behind the scene, but I want to thank both Marks. So don't get them confused. That's Mark Alderman from the airport, and then Mark Aaron. Just want to simply say thank you for all that you've done. Thank you, Mark. There's been a lot going on this summer with our young people. There's been tennis camps. The police academy, we graduated over 40 young people in the youth police academy. You heard and saw the video from the airport. You heard about Rock the Block. Charles Crumpler was out there as well. And then there's a number of people that hired our young people this summer. So there's been a lot going on in the city of Danville in regards to our young people this summer, and I hope we can continue to keep it up. You've heard it from all the other council members. I did tell them, please have a safe and happy 4th of July. Enjoy your family. Those of you who are visiting our city for the first time, you've heard Councilman Whittle talk about flags that we have on the corner of Main and Memorial Drive, and there's a lot going on in the city of Danville. On that note, I said meeting adjourned.